think the point of this video is understood. Essentially, I'm going to be explaining the entire history of fashion, not comprehensively, because no, yeah, comprehensively obviously, but not minimally. And again, this will be from mouth. It's not going to be any. There's not going to be any written script. This is not scripted, so there's a really good chance that this is all going to be left and right. I think that's the correct, understandable word, adequate word. So, to begin, so there are multiple stages in the making of fashion. There's no one thing that sort of catalyzed fashion. There are multiple catalysts. Catalyst is a really broad word, but I still place it. Multiple catalysts which were placed in multiple areas which led to the growth of it. So we would obviously have to start with the functional area of it. Fashion was started with the guise of protection, meaning if you looked at cavemen, obviously they weren't running around naked, so they began to use the skins of the animals they hunted at some point, probably 300,000 BC or something like that. That's really far away, but still, there was a point like that when they realized that the skins of the animals were very good insulation. So from those skins, they began to make these. They used to wear the skins. No alteration. They should wear the skins as insulation. Because obviously, humans didn't just exist in Texas, and there wasn't really lots of global warming. There was no global warming back then, other than methane releases. So obviously, it was more colder. That's why they had to, and that was the best idea. And they probably used human skin as well, but that doesn't happen today. And that's the main period. Now, in these tribes, what happened with everything? You put, if you take an ant colony, I know I got off topic. If you take an ant colony, and you put like 500 ants, it's a really big ant colony. There's going to be one ant which reigns supreme over the rest at some point. So that's basically the same idea with this one. What's essentially happening is that at this point, when tribes are more developed, cultures are more developed, essentially they're beginning to form systems, and there's a leader of these systems. A really, that example comes later actually, the Egyptians, but these tribes had leaders obviously. I don't know who the leaders were. I don't have lots of data on that, but just imagine some cave tribe, and the cave tribe has a chief. Now, the thing is that there's a difference between the chief and the wench. That's a really weird word, but the there's a difference between those two. So they're not gonna wear the same clothing. There needs to be this factor which differentiates the wench from the chief, and the best option was obviously in the clothing. So the scraps were given to the wenches, with which were probably just leftover meat, not meat, I mean skin, leftover skin, and etc. And the chiefs were obviously given the fresh one, the leopards, the good hides essentially. Still no sleeving. Sleeving came really later, but just for now, just to give an example, to get that picture in your head, at this point, when tribes started to develop and get more idea, they used to basically use it as a class definer, or a thing which defines a person's class, something like that. So yeah, that's been made clear. Okay, so what point? By the way, this is the first section of the discussion. This is the sort of I'd say no, it's not prehistoric. It's really long ago. I mean, more longer than that. Let's just call it that. Way more long ago than we can imagine. That's a good way to define it. Then the next one would be sort of intelligible and comprehensible time. At this point, you could say it. So look, at this point, these tribes you mentioned earlier, they've developed a bit more. I don't think I can name every single defining feature of what made their fashion, because plainly I haven't researched that far. I have, but even in the articles I've checked, which are all backed up by the way, there's not really a lot of data on it. What I can tell you is that this thing that the tribes had, it evolved on a really long scale. Now, the main tribe we're going to talk about here, as I mentioned before, I said that it would come up, is Egyptians. So this, were the Egyptians actually? I need to confirm this because I'm not going to rant out data like that. Give me a second. Oh, the internet's a cut. You know what? Fuck this lab class. So Cleopatra, whatever the fuck year she was in, excuse my grammar, but that doesn't matter. Cleopatra expressed herself through her fashion. I mean, she did express herself through putting bees inside of a wooden husk and then shoving it up her vagina, but that's another topic. She had a really big influence on fashion because she's basically the reason it's mainstream. I mentioned the tribes earlier and how they used to use it to define class, but Cleopatra took it to a really new level. She used the idea of fashion not just to show class, but also to show wealth. How she was pretty rich, I mean, she was really rich, but she wanted to use it to show her wealth and how wealthy she was. I mean, you get what I'm talking about. Then the thing is that when you show you're wealthy, you get a lot of attention, and who doesn't love attention? So the other civilizations, tribes would be a really, s- it would not tribes, civilizations, because it's at a large scale at this point. The other civilizations, I don't know, for example, maybe the Arabians, probably, but lots of civilizations other than the Egyptians, they slowly stole it from them. They were impressed by it. They were impressed by it, and then they slowly adopted it into their own lifestyle. So at this point, nobody's wearing animal skins. At this point, they're wearing, you know what I'm talking about, expensive stuff to show class. At this point, we've made it clear that society evolved in such a way that showing that you have class is important now. We've we've confirmed that part. Also confirmed that classism exists now. Rich people get to show off, poor people don't because they're poor. So we've got that as well. The next stage would be probably when the French began adopting it. Okay, just start imagining a bit more, okay? Remember what I said about them trying to show their wealth? Well, right now, if you want to show, if you let's just bring today our postmodernism into example. I think postmodernism would be a correct word for today's society, but yeah, let's call it postmodernism. What will you need to do? आ गया
किस लिए लगा रहे हो?
really
हाँ?
कुछ भी नहीं
कुछ भी नहीं का क्या मतलब है? मैंने कहा कुछ है। कुंडी किस लिए लगा रहे हो?
बस
हाँ?
ऐसी apologize for that deviation, but getting back to the point, it's not weird if your mother walks into your room. I'm 15 years old, not a fucking 20-year-old in his own apartment, for fuck's sake. But here we have an article from scanderbagel.medium.com. I really do not think this is legitimate. I'm not sure of it either, but I'm just gonna read this as context. Cleopatra's influence on fashion is a testament to her enduring allure and timelessness of her style. From ancient Egypt to the modern runway. Oh, fucking cunt. This is cunt material. Look, I don't give a shit about her elegance. Actually, what am I saying? She did introduce elegance into it. That's pretty. I think that was a time of philosophy. Yeah. During Cleopatra, obviously, people did have to question things. Actually, that's a really good article. I apologize. Let's branch off that. Fashion is just not just clothes. It's also cultural impacts and influences. It's just packed in cloth. That's it. So you think the thing is that when your tribes are worshipping suns, while we were getting back to the tribes, they're interconnected. Everything is. When your tribe is worshipping suns, I don't mean suns, I mean sun. At some point, you've got to start questioning the sun, because you don't just sit idle and worship a sun, obviously. So when you question the sun, you see what you get is a philosopher, and a philosopher is a person. I'm not gonna say this in a really broad way, who does philosophy. Okay, no shit. So philosophers question everything. So they start to unpack more and more things. They say, "Oh, why are we only studying the sun? Where did all of this come from?" So they get more and more ideas. Then obviously at that point they start to look into beauty. People were starting to move more into class. They were starting to divide people into class. With that was obviously the rise of the philosophers. With that was the artisans as well. People who just dedicated their craft to things. That came slowly, but it did. So at this point, we have artisans, philosophers, and a queen who shoves a weird wooden thing up her vagina. So how are these three things connected? So the thing is that philosophers at this point, if I'm correct, they began to unpack the truth of beauty. Yes, they did. How? Well, how the fuck am I supposed to? They did. I'm telling you. And with the philosophers unpacked beauty, the artisans put this to work. They had more. It kept getting more advanced at that point. So I think that just maybe why the designs Cleopatra wore were good. We bring up a design of Cleopatra actually. Yes. Okay, I can't see shit. This is not okay here. Look, if you look at the pictures of the Egyptians at the time of Cleopatra, this is from history of costume. This is from Cleopatra as well, but you can directly see what the fuck. Wait, you can directly see what I'm talking about. I think low brightness might suffice. Okay, that was the deviation. This should be intelligible. Look at these designs. If you compare these to the designs cavemen wore, you would definitely find some resemblance in that, because it's still that basic cloth. Fuck you. It's basically, you can see the cloth at the bottom, but it's been altered to fit the standard of beauty. It wasn't there before, but it was. And if you Google Cleopatra right now and look at her, you can clearly see that there's definitely some basis. You can tell that there was this piece of square cloth, and then that was made. It's not like it's some absolutely abstract cut off piece. Maybe it was made later. I'm not sure of the entire history of Cleopatra and her fashion. I'm talking about all of fashion in general. So that's why I probably don't have a lot of information on that. But I do know that I'm really correct in this one. Well, I lost track there. The point is that Cleopatra had a big history, a big impact on fashion in itself, because she is the first person who introduced that really, really lavish sector of fashion with her lapis lazuli crowns and stuff. Now we've got Cleopatra. Okay, people start copying Cleopatra everywhere. Start copying and copying and copying, because who doesn't want to look lavish, as I mentioned before. Now we are at the point of the French. This part, the French part, this is really good. Now look, fashion has advanced a bit. Okay, it's not like everybody's still wearing those pieces of cloth just cover their dicks. Okay, everybody looks good. Everybody wants to look good at this point. It gets commercialized, you know. At first, it's meant for only one main thing, for the queen, and she's the only one who gets it. But then, as it gets more commercialized, which trust me happens a lot, expensive things get watered down. The lower people also start to adopt that. At the point of the French, it wasn't like that. This was quite a long time ago. So I don't remember what the French term was called, but there was this design. There was a group of designers at the time who had who were just look. What the fuck am I saying? Getting back to the point, things had advanced. Okay, the rich, they had artisans to make their clothes. They hired those artisans. This point was called the something period, basically, when balls existed and all, and those gowns. But look, at the time, people had evolved to get artisans for, you know, that old timey thing going on back. This is a really broad statement, but you know that old timey thing. That's just imagine Charlie Chaplin, but minus 100 years. That should be what I'm describing. So that deviates from something else. You know, it deviates from the artisans who made the clothing. Like, if you look at suits today, it's I don't have a suit right now, but they're really easy to make. You look at this shirt I'm wearing; it's just loosely stitched together. But back then, every single thing used to be made for the rich by hand, really carefully. There used to be names. You know, these people were known by names just for their clothing. There was no the brand name. That came quite a bit later. Also, I apologize for the deviation back there. I lost track of what I was saying. But now that we're back to this point, people didn't have name tags back then, and they were known for the quality of their clothing, and that's all. Now, the poor wenches, or the common folk, or the middle class, they still wore weird pieces of clothing. I mean, it was more advanced, but it was still like weird jute things going on with weird sleeves which were badly made, etc. Those clothes were also made by hand by the poor families. You know, there was no mass producing back then. Everything was made with heart. Now, getting back to the Cleopatra thing and connecting it to this one, this is the third phase. This is the pinnacle, basically. After this, it all goes downhill, trust me. At this point, you know how Cleopatra was extravagant and wore a really concerning amount of diamonds on her head? Well, that's exactly what's happening at this point. you've probably heard the random names of King Edward or King Louis the Fifth or Sixth. I don't even know these people. These are absolutely random names. But if you Google them, they probably exist. Just Google any king. They are wearing a really concerning amount of jewels on them. Because as I said before, extravagance. You gotta convey extravagance. I remember seeing this coat. I remember seeing this coat very vividly. It is a real coat worn by an actual monarch. It was a monarch. It was a coat which was made out of the tails of a lemur, something resembling a lemur, and there were more than 200 tails. And so just imagine a piece of fabric. Imagine any. Imagine this piece of fabric, except it in every single square there is a lemur tail attached to. You see the squares? Well, every single one of these squares had a lemur's tail attached. Just imagine that in that sort of grid. So that was the sort of extravagance you saw back then. For like what? And yeah, that was actual quality. You don't see that today. Anyways, I just spoiled the whole ending. I'll get back there. So at that time it was really extravagant, but the thing is that they just used it to show their. It wasn't to show any to sort of maximize their features. To sort of make their features pop out. So I remember this name. I promise you. No, that came. Yeah, no. I remember this guy. Beau Francis. What the fuck was it? Frederick Worth. Beau Francis Charles Frederick Worth or Pennyworth. That's his name. Okay, I memorized it by heart, but I forgot. I need to fucking Google this shit again. It's exhausting holding this sort of information. Okay, you have to keep maintaining it. You can't maintain it all the time. Beau. Do I not have any of my searches saved? Francis. Penny. I really hope this is. Fuck this. This is. What did I even Google? But look, there was this designer. Fuck that. There was this main designer, Beau Francis. Now, what he did is he was a middle class man, by the way. He couldn't afford fashion. At that time, as I mentioned before, Cleopatra and her whole extravagant thing was still going on. People were wearing really expensive stuff, and the poor wenches were forced to wear these weird things. So, he, as I was a middle class man, but when he looked at how fashion was going, he realized that they were going complete. I mean, at the time, men used to wear high heels, lipstick. No, yeah, probably lipstick, nail polishes. Definitely that. They wore everything. I mean, they wore it in such a way. Okay, let's make this a little bit understandable for the people watching this, because obviously nobody's a huge nerd over here. But imagine, what's the word? An opium fucker. Okay, I think that's an understandable term. Imagine an opium fucker.
Your phone ringing. Your phone.
Brief intervention. Hello? Ciao. I'll come back in a second. Mind you, I'm a 17-year-old. No, I'm a 15-year-old child, not a fucking 20-year-old. So, both Francis Frederick Worth, as I mentioned before, did is okay. No, why is my audio not capturing? That's really weird. Yeah, I fucked something up, didn't I? Okay, that's besides the point. If you can't hear me, then I'll just record another one. I have lots of time on my hands. But getting back to the point, he realized that these people were being way too flamboyant. As I mentioned before, they were wearing high heels. That's not a high heel. They were wearing lots of jewelry, and they really didn't care about color theory. They were all just wearing as many colors as they could, just bombarding. As I was giving you that example, imagine an opium fucker. You give him $1 million out of your bank note, okay? You give him 3 stores. You give him Balenciaga. You give him Rick Owens. And you give him a private entry to be able to buy every single piece that Playboy Carti has worn. Imagine that, and he just wears every single piece covered in gold. And it doesn't look good, but I mean, it's really expensive. It probably costs more than every single bill I'm going to pay in my life. But that's what was happening. Now, Charles Frederick Farnsworth, I can't believe I forgot his name, but what he did, he realized is that these people are really fucked up and they have no sense of what they're doing, just want to look rich. So he set a sort of ground rule for it, going completely against that. He made things the modern suit that was designed by him. He designed the modern suit because that was just way too expensive. Actually, no, he didn't design the modern. He just made it way more watered down. Think Mark Twain. Yeah, Mark Twain was. Yeah. Look at the clothes Mark Twain wore. Now imagine that, but a lot of years back, but something like that. Why am I being so blunt with my answers? But the point is, he is the reason for anti-androgyny in fashion. Because at the time, men were going way too flamboyant. There was no difference between men and women. But at that point, that was the defining point where masculine fashion and feminine fashion became two different sectors. You wanted to be a little bit masculine as a girl, fuck off. You wanted to be feminine as a man, fuck off. That's what Charles Frederick Worth thought. So yeah, he's the reason that at the time men were really not showing themselves off. You could say that. But yeah. And we go forward, the British adopted it from the French actually. The French, I told you, they were starting it. But the British, they stole it from the French because they steal everything. I mean, they stole the Kohinoor, they steal everything. I mean, they stole India as well. They steal everything. So obviously they had to steal fashion. So they stole that and I think blatantly copied it into themselves. Those weird. I'm giving another understandable example because if I give some absolutely random example and nobody understands it, it's gonna get really difficult. Give me a fucking history. If you look at this is a good example. If you look at the British during the East India Company phase, look at the clothes they were wearing. I'm serious, look at the clothes they're wearing. If you look at the clothes they're wearing, you will. Why is it closed? Fucking cunt. If you look at the clothes they're wearing during that time, British clothing 1500. Yes, you'll see. Fuck, man. This is what I meant about extravagance. See that? That's extravagance. Now we're gonna do 1600. Still, yes, you can still see it's still that. It's a little bit refined, but this is the Victorian era, so it's like this. Now what we're gonna do, 1700s. Now what you're gonna see is, by the way, no, I'm not making this up, okay? I know what I'm doing, I know what I'm typing. This. See that? Now, do you notice a single difference between this one and the one I showed before with the really concerningly huge coat? Look at this. Let me show the men's one. Because the one I showed at first was an example of a man. I didn't show the example of a man, but you can see that this clothing, which was mainstream, went from really concerningly huge coats. There's no such thing as a coat too huge, but to these really delicate satin dresses, which again were a consequence of Sir Charles Frederick Worth's work. Now we're on this, okay? We've gone through all that. We've gone through the first civilizations and how they had to use cloaks to protect themselves. We've gone through how those advanced into tribes, and then those tribes had to show class and divide them. We've also talked about how Cleopatra evolved from those tribes and used it to show beauty and class. Then after that, we talked about how that was adopted. How this was adopted by other cultures, including the French, and how that was stolen from the British, like they steal everything. Then, that's what we've talked about in a nutshell. Okay, this is really I really hope this is understandable, because I think I'm talking in a really good way, while leaving some points, but still, it's a pretty good way of talking. Now, we're gonna talk about what is more recognizable. You don't have a satin dress made by hand by like 8 artisans. Trust me, you don't. You probably can't afford it anyway, but you really don't have one, even if you wanted to. Now, we get into, what the fuck was it called, man? I need to Google this. I've researched the whole thing. I just need to get the names right. I can talk to the audience about it, but still, it's useless if you can't get the names perfectly. La Belle Epoque. I fucking got it. La Belle Epoque was one of the designers who's credited with starting tags. What's a tag? This is a tag, and I'm at shame that it's from Outfitters, but still, I needed to wear something. I'm not gonna walk around naked, maybe. But La Belle Epoque is one of a number of few designers who started to put tags on their clothing. I accidentally blurted out that at the time people didn't have tags on their clothes and they were all made by artisans unknown by name. So at this point, La Belle Epoque was also an artisan. Okay. So at one point, she's like, you know what? I have a fucking name. I'm gonna put my name on the clothing. So she put her name on her clothing so that it would become recognizable. And this was the start of ready to wear. Because people were paying so much for clothing, it just got fucking exhausting. So the designers just started to put their name on the clothing and started to make sort of ready to made. Like anybody could wear it, pick it up, and then wear it. That was a really new concept back then. Back then, as I mentioned before, they took out the measurements for each person and then used that. So this was sort of like a really big transition, because clothes used to be really expensive, but ready to made wear, That's way cheaper to produce, no labor cost, just a piece of cloth. I mean, they were still really good back then. I'd rather buy that. But you get gist of what I'm trying to communicate here. That was the Belle Epoque. It was also a really beautiful era. A really beautiful era. I can't even try to quantify that. Let me just get the phone, the Slavic class I threw back there. You look at the stuff from there, not this one. There's. The fuck did it go? It's gone. Yeah, I think I got. Okay, no, I think I got this. Yeah, I'm correct. But anyway, you look at some dresses on this one. There's this part almost before the Belle Epoque era, and then sort of converging into it. There's this dress, really beautiful dress. This one, I think. I think it was this one. This one. And there's also this picture of this painting from the Belle Epoque era. It was also an artistic era, so in that picture there's sort of this dead woman in a bar. No, yeah, something like that. Really beautiful dress in it from that era. Now we've arrived to the tags and ready to made wear. Now where do I start? Because this is the point where things start to go crazy. What do I mean by crazy? I mean they go absolutely what's the word? Batshit, because everybody just wants money at this point. The craftsmanship starting to fleet away. So obviously there's going to be discussion of the world wars. This is from the Belle Epoque era, from 1890 to the 1900s, early era, early versions of parts. That depends on how you say it. But at this point, the idea of tags and ready-to-made wear was getting wildly spread. Everybody was on the chase for ready-to-made wear. I mean, no, people were really just stopping to make tailored goods. Not completely, but it just started happening. Now, what do I mean when ready-to-wear started to be made? Suits, for example, they started to basically get made. More designers also. Yeah, this was also a really good era for designers, because as I mentioned before, back then, people were known for only their artistic craft. But now, designers were becoming a status symbol, a really big one. One example I would give, no, not Ferragamo, it's probably Christian Dior, and what was his name? Yeah, Cristobal Balenciaga. They started emerging at this point. I mean, Balenciaga's fucked now, but Cristobal was a really good designer. So was Christian Dior. But they emerged from this period, you know. Now, what was the main moving factor of this? World War One and World War Two. Look at the Belle Epoque. You know what? You look at the Belle Epoque period for a second. What times were these? If you had this thing called if you had this thing called fucking eyes, you'd see that it started at 1890 and ended in 1914. Now, when did the World War happen? I just wonder, World War. I just wonder when it happened. Oh, fuck you. I said World War. That's not world. Trust the process, okay? I know what I'm doing. If you were to just Google World War One and it's gonna load, okay? If you were to just Google World War One, you would find that the timings are. Stop being stuck on the part. Yes, I'm gonna make you wait. This is horrible. Why is this not loading? This is really concerning. What is wrong with my internet distributor? I think he wants 5 toothbrushes in his rectum. Come on, you fat cunt. Wait a minute. This is not right. I don't deserve this. Okay, look. Basically, the point is it happened during 1914 or before or after it, okay? Now, again, I'm gonna say if you had fucking eyes, you'd see that there's some sort of correlation between that. You wanna know what it is? The thing is that when all of your money, which was going into your really fine suits, is now going into the world wars to make their suits and their watches. By the way, what the world war is the reason we wear watches now. So you have no money. Half the designers, that's my ring. Half the designers, they're all just dead because of that. Not actually dead, they just don't have money to do anything. Bankrupt because people can't afford clothes. So yeah, that's what happened, and all the money was going into making uniforms. Hugo Boss, he did actually help out the Nazis with their suits. He made all the suits for them. Hugo Boss. Honestly, yeah, he did. That's an actual. I'm making that statement. You can check it right now. I am right, and he was affiliated with Hitler as well. He was in a gay marriage with him. That's human, okay. But that's besides the point. The point is people can't afford clothes now. What is gonna happen now? Because if we make expensive clothes at very high prices, people are not gonna buy them. But if we were to take cheap cloth which cost less and make that into a cheap shirt, what you'd get is a money machine. And a money machine is how you make money. If it wasn't that evident in the name. But yeah, that's the point we're at now. At this point, after the world wars, people just couldn't afford shit. And especially during. So now they've got to make cheap clothing which cost less. That's where the quality began diminishing. It did increase though. Yeah, it did. Oh yeah, I've seen really good products. This is deviating from the conversation, but I'm just gonna mention this. There's this table made by this French craftsman. It has tortoise shells embedded inside of it in straight line, actual tortoise shells, and then it has gold rimming and backing on it. Really beautiful table. Props to him. I couldn't make anything like that in my entire life. Now we're getting to the post-World War period. Okay, this is the fun part because I know a lot about this. Now, after the World Wars, what happened is that, as I mentioned before, people couldn't afford things, and with that, there was a really gloomy phase. You know, because the thing is that when Margaret dies, the person you fucked for 25 years, it's not really something to celebrate unless you're a depressed house husband. So people were really devastated at that point. That was the depression point at that moment. That was 1920s, 30s, 40s. If I'm correct, no, yeah, 1920s, 30s, and probably ending sometime at the 40s, mid or end. Now, this crouch is fucking hard. Okay. Now, at this point, everybody's wearing black. I'm just gonna let me get picture of fuck this cunt phone. It's not gonna load it up anyway. But I'll try. Okay, I'm not fucking cunt. Fuck you. Okay. Oh fuck! I was right. July 28th, 1914. You hear those fucking words? On the dot, I was correct. Anyways, uh, I forgot what I was gonna say. Okay, no, 1950s, 1930s fashion. Where is the black shit? Okay, men. Okay, no, post World War. Okay, fuck you, war. Fa- fashion. Okay. Yes. Here, let me just read this for you to see how correct I was. Throughout the post-war period, a tailored feminine look was prized, and accessories such as gloves and pearls were popular. Tailor suits had fitted jackets with peplum, usually wore with a long, narrow pencil skirt. Cunt. Cunt. Okay, padded shoulders, boxy lines, tuck blouses, and slimming designs. The second end of the World War saw the rapid fade of a few fashion trends that were dominant and popular prior to the war, swiftly replaced by a new wave. This doesn't even explain anything. Cunt, 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 cunt. Okay. Anyways, this article had a really good point actually, which I didn't touch on properly, but I'm just gonna touch it on it again just to give a sort of retrospect of everything we've learned. So the article said that at the time, women were doing 5 wardrobe changes a day. Uh, but after the World Wars, and I'm quoting this, it just really wasn't practical. So it really wasn't practical to be wearing 5 looks a day. But as common folk would mention, outfits, I heard that word. But that wasn't practical, so they had to stick to this normal shape. I'm gonna suck up my shit and I'm just gonna read it from this because they're probably a really reputable source. Yeah, that was okay. Where the fuck did it go? Okay, yeah, there it is. Okay, wow, that's Forbes. I'm really sorry, Forbes. Okay, let me quote this. And I quote: women before the war were doing up to 5 outfit changes a day, and with this war, this was not longer practical because men were out risking their lives. Notes: Kulig, World War One. Okay, no, that's notes Kulig, not World. World War One gave way to smoother silhouettes, pockets on women's clothing. So why pockets? Why more practical alternatives? You see, firstly, it was the influence of World War One because there was lots of pockets, and that really just got posted into fashion. But with that was the practicality. At the time, women were carrying clutches. I think there's two reasons for this. Number one was just the practicality in general. Clutches were really expensive, and it just wasn't practical to bring your clutch everywhere in 19. So they included pocket because if you were to make this is a really rough one by the way, but I think it's really a good one. Robbery is just a secondary one. The main reason is probably the practicality. But if you are to think, when everybody's poor, obviously people are going to steal. Now, would you rather be carrying an expensive bag like this, or yeah, I love this, or would you rather be uh, having pockets? Yeah, obviously pockets are the more practical option. I hate this mask, but pockets are the more practical option. So that's why they shifted to that. Now we're getting to the fun shit. This is 1950. Yeah. It's weird how I have all this memorized. Now we're getting to 1950. Now what happened in 1950 is the grandchildren and children of the gloomy people were born now. Meaning, look, in the World War One, And two, the victims of that, their families, they obviously members died, and there was lots of sadness spreading and havoc wreaked everywhere. Okay, there was sadness and mourning in that period. But after that period, post World War One and World War Two, like post the period of that, there was a rebellion. You could definitely say that, a rebellion. What was this rebellion? This was at the end of There was the 1950s. No, 1950s was sort of when people started. It was not like it was not that. That came a bit later. It was the 19. You know those 1950 poppy dresses, and those, like, you get what I'm saying. You understand exactly what I'm saying. If I a really neon thing, the American dream, that was at that point basically. Yeah, it was. Now those colorful silhouettes were because of a rebellion of the ideas of the World War II people. They were like, I'm sad, I'm depressed because my wife and kid died with a bomb. Okay, that sounds really but they were gloomy about it, and then the kids of the kids were like really against it because they want to express themselves, they want to be happy and want to be free from the mourning of their loved ones. What does it even mean? I'm losing my grammar every second. But getting back to the point, that's what's happening. More colors. Now this poppy thing going on is mostly in America, Britain, etc. Came the hippie movement. There's another word for this. Counterculture movement. That's the word. Because you're countering the culture. It's really easy to understand. If you don't understand what counterculture, it's literally in the name, like for God's sakes. But yeah, counterculture happened. So the hippie culture came. The hippies were called hippies because they were, I think, relaxed. You know those peace symbols and most of the indie genre, along with a little bit of blues, and I could go on and on. Along with those weird people who take pictures of sunflowers and those peace signs, which are like that. That yeah, it's something resembling. You know what peace sign I'm talking about. That was from the hippie genre, and they were about peace. Because there were lots of political tensions at that time, and that was actually a factor in that. So due to that, those political tensions, they decided to resort to peace. They wanted to find peaceful ways to solve capitalism, peaceful ways to solve no, not just consumer capitalism, peaceful ways to solve consumer greed, etc. They want to find peaceful ways to solve that, and they did that with their culture. I know I'm talking about something completely different than fashion, but fashion was a really important part of the hippie culture. I mean, hippies sometimes do walk around naked, but that's probably when they're high on their weed and marijuana, because LSD is fun for them. I think drugs were quite a huge part of the culture, especially marijuana. They used a lot of marijuana. They used a concerning amount of marijuana logos and everything, and they did weed and did bong. I think they probably drank bong water as well, but they were involved in stuff like that. Now you see, there was a counter to the counterculture. Now you remember when I was like, when I remember when I said that the hippies weren't like. Well, you see, there were some hippies. Okay, there were some hippies. They were just like, holy, I can't handle this shit. The government's crippling. Capitalism's everywhere. Consumer greed's everywhere, and the only thing I can really possibly do is just rip my eyes out and then cut the cords which are connecting my eyes to my brain and then stab my frontal lobe, so I just can't experience anything. And how did they communicate that? Uh, Pain, death, blood, sex, anger. Yeah. So they were basically divorcing themselves from the idea that happiness was the key to everything. They're like, no, fuck that. We're gonna beat the shit out of these people. So I wouldn't say punks were entirely fashion. I'd say that they were a political movement which was highly embedded into fashion. Now, how did this happen? Good question. I think before we go to that, I think there was this other word called a bimbo for people who walked around huge. That was also from the hippie movement. Okay, there was a thing called a bimbo. I think they were from the hippie movement. Really wide suits, funky looking people. That's obviously been translated into today. I'm glad it's going to explode. Deviating from that weird statement, we now have sex. Remember when I said blood, sex, anger, pain, power? One of the words in that was sex. If you all know, but actually, no, I'm not gonna be. This is really just beautiful. Sex is the name of a shop run by Vivienne Westwood, which was the catalyst for the punk movement. And yes, the movement's literally called a punk. So when I did this, I was being literal. Now, obviously, the punk movement's everybody's favorite. You go on AliExpress, scroll. Punk, hip hop, jewelry, bracelet thing. That's everywhere now. But this is the real punk we're talking about. It was a actual movement, not some dumb, watered down shit. How long has it been? However long it's been 50. It's been 1 hour almost. I'm proud I just sat here and talked about fashion for 1 hour. That means I know quite a bit. Anyways, uh, now we have Vivienne Westwood. Before we're going to talk about Vivienne Westwood, I feel like we should mention a few designers because I haven't mentioned a single designer except Belle Polk and Cristobal Balenciaga. I mentioned them, but I'm just going to give some context on that. These two people were the people who sort of gave awareness to everybody, I'd say. First, we're going to talk about Christian Dior. Okay, Christian Dior developed the hourglass silhouette, which everybody wore during the 40s and 50s, 1940s and 19. It was the thing people wore, and they still wear it today. You go anywhere, they still wear it. What is the hourglass silhouette? Well, if you don't have ears, this is the hourglass silhouette. It's where the waist is small and the ass is big, and then the boobs are big. Yeah, that's basically the hourglass silhouette. I'm gonna fuck you. Christian Dior essentially invented that. Back then, they did bad shit what they were doing. Dior, he pioneered and invented that silhouette. And I mean, like, I can't even lie, he did a really good job. I don't know how he just came up with that. Dior. There. No, if I see a Dior bag, I'm gonna shit myself. This is the hourglass silhouette. You see how? Yeah, you can see the resemblance. I just clicked something, but you can see it. Even if you look at other ones, that's actually really good. Wow. Fuck you. This is the hourglass silhouette. Why does Christian Dior look like a big cunt? No offense, Christian Dior. His brand's shit now. Now, Christian Dior was in the works, okay? He was making his hourglass silhouette. Lovely, nice. Now, Cristobal was like, you can take my 7 inches. Because he went completely against what Christian Dior made. He made this thing called asymmetrical. Yeah, he did a really good job. That's why I love Cristobal. He completely contradicted what Christian Dior stood for. He created designs which asked you, what the fuck is going on? If I want to talk about him more fun, then Yeah, he's an actual good-looking person. He actually looked good, you know. Cristobal Designs. Also, he's from Spain, so obviously. Okay. Firstly, we're gonna talk about this. That's a broken screen. Look at this. Nobody made these back then. Let me get the best design by far. Oh, fuck you, fat cunt. This one. The fish one. You know what I'm talking about. This one. This one. Nobody made that back then, but he pioneered that idea that could exist. He pioneered that idea is not stupid, you know, that it really is something. And Balenciaga was really, really popular back then. Not only because his designs were really good, but also because he put a lot of work into his clothes. He studied at multiple really good he studied with multiple really good tailors and artisans, and he picked that up like a sponge. And you look at his archive work, you can see that. I haven't seen it, but you probably can see it because come on, he's Cristobal Balenciaga. He doesn't fuck with anything. But now that we've got context on that, oh fuck, my battery's gonna explode. Okay, Vivienne Westwood. Vivienne Westwood dated Marcus. It sounds like some random teens talking about some sort of drama, but who's Marcus? You see, if you had ears and eyes, and you have seen this, and I quote, I hate that disgusting word, aesthetic, where you see random pieces of tape having jumbly words on them, you'd recognize the Sex Pistols. If you haven't heard them, you're a cunt. Sorry. Now, if you knew a little bit about the Sex Pistols, you knew that this lead singer of the band, called Marcus, is the husband of Vivienne Westwood. Westwood's her first husband's name, by the way. She had a child and she divorced him for Marcus. But still, okay, come on. Now, Vivienne Westwood was a high school teacher. I don't know why I know more about her than Cleopatra, but that's besides the point. She was a high school teacher who knew about clothing. But with time, she was not a housewife. She wanted to have rampant sex on a broken bed. That's the person she is. She wanted to she's a Cleopatra essentially. Okay, she wanted to take this weird wooden husk, shove bumblebees inside her and shove it up her vagina. That's the person Vivienne Westwood is. So what she did, she divorced her husband and she started to make clothing in this little shop called I don't know what it's called, but it had a really good name. Oh, the fuck you. Okay, what was the first name? I'm gonna Google this shit now. Let me pull up my trusty. You know what? Let me just handle this shit right now. Like a champ, okay? This. See me now. Fuck this mask, I look good anyway. So, what we're gonna look at is sex. Okay, no, that's a really bad idea. Vivienne Westwood shop first name. Okay. Stories of. Okay, what? Teddy boy clothes. Okay, fuck, I got the name wrong. It's Malcolm. Okay, the name's Malcolm. Forgive me. So, Vivienne got into cahoots with this person called Malcolm who ran Sex Pistols. Now, she made clothes for Malcolm. She made clothes for Malcolm. Now, when she made clothes for Malcolm, he went to sing in those clothes, and those clothes became really popular because, come on, man, capitalism. Why is it capitalism? But you get the point. The clothes got extremely popular. because they look really good. Then, yeah, that diverged into multiple subcultures, including goth. Goth was derived from music, etc. But yeah, music became a really pivotal part of fashion. Back then, I don't think it was really tied. But then it's like these two converging things come like this, and then they sort of like ramble themselves in each other and start having rampant sex and then have children. So, yes. Then we get to the really modern part. 2000s, everything's basically a copy of the main movements we talked about. Okay, it's basically a copy of either the classical uh, semi-formal movement or the punk movement or hippie culture. Everything's a derivative of that. Okay, nothing else. But yeah, and here we are. I need to take a brief break. Then we're gonna talk about the other parts because I really rushed that in, so we need to properly cover all that. You thought it was over? It's been 1 hour. There's one left. How do you turn this? This is a fucking cunt software. How do you turn this off? This is really concerning. Okay, I'll just delete that. No, not audio cap. Okay, yeah, no, thank you. I'm deleting audio capture. I'm deleting screen capture so you can see my face before I delete this. You can't hear me. This is working. I'm just gonna add some new sources. Uh, Capture card. Okay, macOS screen capture. Okay, macOS screen capture. We have. We have audio input capture. Okay, what? Okay, fuck off. Anyways, with that, we now need audio capture, and then we need one more that's called video capture. Okay. Okay. That worked. Now we get to the good part. Really had this to do. Okay. Now the punks are done, okay? Everything's evolving from the punks. You know something, the punks, their shit started to get copied because, see, the thing is that there's this thing called fast fashion, which began. Corporations realized that if you were to make cheap clothing about fun things, you can make money off them. Now they did exactly that. Obviously, they copied the punks in really stupidly, disgustingly cheap ways, and they profited off it, as always. This became a really big cycle, actually. Yeah, it did. Another intervention. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. I'm gonna die. Getting back to the main point. This capitalism, which I mentioned, where the punks got stolen from, that looks horrible, became a cycle and was a cycle for a while. You remember? The hippie movement, that's been capitalized too. This was a point where everything began to get cheaper. Expensive things, they got cheaper. By 1973, they banned the use of tortoise shell, which was a really nice material. I really wanted tortoise shell glasses, but they used cheaper alternatives. You need to replicate tortoise shell. Look at glasses today, they'll break like this in a second, no matter how much you pay for them. But this became a cycle, as I mentioned 3 times. You just copy things and make them, everything got cheaper. Yeah. Now, this is a cycle that did not end. It's still going on. See this? Greaser culture. This are probably Hot Topic, something copied from that. Hot Topic, for example. Let's get to Hot Topic. Hot Topic is the first main brand, I think, who really jump started that capitalism. Why, goths? If you were a real goth, you would just listen to Sisters of Quiet Mercy on endless repeat while drinking your own blood. Well, what happened is that people just started doing it for the fashion. Just one example, by the way, people just did it started doing it for the fashion. You know what these people were called? Mall goths. If I met a mall goth and she was standing right here in front of me, I mean, like, if you're recognizing that you are a mall goth and you're in it for that's something absolutely else. You recognize that, then that's perfect. But I see you standing next to me and you're a mall goth who's saying, I'm a goth, I swear to God, I don't care what gender is, I'm gonna shove 6 burning toothbrushes with the sharp end burning, so that when I stick it up your rectum, it's gonna leave this scarring on your rectum. You know what happens when you have scarring on your rectum? It's gonna get you infected, and taking a shit when you have an anal infection is not a fun experience. And I want you to have a non-fun experience. So trust me, you do not want to come near me if you're a poser. Okay? At least have the fucking guts to acknowledge that you're not putting your full effort in. Speaking about that, we got these copies as I mentioned before. Look, even back then, yes, there were these weird copying people, but not every designer was doing it for the giggles. That statement somebody gave. It's all shit and giggles until somebody shits. Well, people did give a shit. Okay, people care about it still. Now I'm gonna give some good examples. Alexander McQueen. Okay, now I have good examples. Alexander McQueen, Ray Kawakabo, Yoji Yamamoto, etc. You look at these people; they were changing it in every single way. You know, they're actually doing shit. And this care, it's gone now. But there was still care back then. Trust me, there was care. Rick Owens as well. I swear to fucking God, I want him inside of me. These designers were there, revolutionizing the game. I mean, nobody revolutionized it more than that Charles Frederick Worth, because he fucked up everything. But still, that him fucking it up sort of gave the idea of making it more masculine again. No, more fun again. Masculine is the absolute opposite word, but that happened. So at this point, there's good designers actually, not some cunts. These people, they just revolutionize everything. You know how everything was masculine? They brought that back. This is why old people just hate you wearing stuff, because they were a part of that non-postmodernism. Either that, or they were a part of the greaser culture or something. If wait, 1985. Yeah, true. Half of the people were just like people trying to not be a part of anything. They were just suffering from the drought of 1980s to 1990s. I wonder how greaser people look now, actually. But I'm getting off topic here. That's why I don't know a lot, because they were born during that period, when everyone was sad and gloomy about the World War. And what about the people born in 1985? You tell me something. If you go into Miami, are you immediately gonna see some weird person wearing full Rick Owens? Rick Owens is really popular, but you're not gonna see people wearing it often. Firstly, because people are still, actually people are rich now. But fashion itself, people are not really involved in it a lot. Half the people are niggas wearing sambas and those weird